Hello, and welcome to episode 135 of the REconomy Podcast, where we discuss economic issues that impact real estate, housing, and affordability. If you find this type of real estate economic discussion valuable, please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to help us grow this podcast. I'm Odeta Kushi, Deputy Chief Economist at First American, and here with me are Mark Fleming, Chief Economist at First American, and Xander Snyder, Senior Commercial Real Estate Economist. Hi, Mark, and welcome back, Xander.
Hey, Odeta. Hi, Xander. And it's the Econoteers back at it again. Terrible reference, but I'm going to use it anyway. Today, we're turning back to one of the most frequently asked questions in commercial real estate right now, and that is office conversions and what impact they're having on the office market more broadly. That's why, Xander, you're here. Why have conversions received so much attention, and is it warranted?
The question of the last several years. Hi, Mark. Hi, Odeta. Well, on some level, the idea of office conversions feels intuitive, right? If we have too much office space due to lower structural demand that has resulted from remote work adoption post-pandemic, why not take some of those office buildings out of stock and convert them into something that we don't have enough of and that are in higher demand?
Oh, like maybe an apartment where someone could live? I don't know.
Exactly.
Now, the catch is that conversions are far easier in theory than in practice, right? They require specialized construction expertise and they can be quite expensive. In some cases, demolition and rebuilding is actually the cheaper path.
Exactly. If only I could snap my fingers and do a full office conversion, we'd have more of them. But they're tough to pull off. And not many of them are happening relative to the total office market. That's why nationally, conversions haven't moved office fundamentals all that much, at least not yet. That said, they are happening more often in the post-pandemic period than they were before. And in certain downtown corridors, they can make up a meaningful chunk of local office supply. So they're starting to add up in a way that could matter more over the next couple of years.
You know, every time someone says, just convert more offices, I picture the interior of an office straight out of that classic 1987 movie, Wall Street. Drop ceilings, beige carpet, fax machines screaming away in the background, someone yelling buy into a phone the size of a brick, and then looking around and saying, yeah, we'll just turn this into luxury housing, no biggie, while waving that magic wand. No problem, right?
It's funny that your mind went to Wall Street because I was thinking more office space than Wall Street, but yes, Gordon Gekko would approve of your reference.
Yes, I pity the printer, though, in office space. That is your 90s bias definitely showing here.
Indeed it is. But Mark, your 1980s Wall Street reference does have a deeper point. When it comes to office conversions, building design matters. Apartments, which make up roughly 3/4 of office conversions, well, they need windows and separate walls, individual plumbing, and emergency egress. And all of that gets much harder when you're dealing with deep office floor plates and a big interior core.
Right. And this is why a lot of conversion projects are with older office buildings that aren't so deep, that don't have that deep floor plate, because it's easier to carve the floor up to fit all of those apartments in, to have their own windows and bathrooms and escape exits and so on. But today isn't just about why it's hard to convert offices. We've talked about that on some prior episodes of REconomy. It's more about why conversions haven't yet substantially moved office fundamentals and why that might be changing.
Yes, we do, in fact, digress. So, Xander, how much office space has actually been converted over the last 5 years?
Well, across the major markets that are tracked, about 52 million square feet of office space has been converted to other uses over the last 5 years.
Well, that sounds like quite a lot until you compare it to total office inventory.
Right. Total U.S. office inventory at the beginning of 2020 was 7.9 billion square feet. So those conversions equal roughly a 0.7% decline in total inventory.
Okay, so 0.7% is not nothing, but neither is it a national market reset button.
It's classic. The Economist 50-some million sounds like a big number, but when it's relative,
Right.
0.7%, yes. So conversions have not taken very much office stock off the market, but if conversions reduce vacancy pressures by shrinking supply, wouldn't it also be worthwhile to compare the converted space to the amount of vacant office space rather than just total stock?
Yes, and that comparison makes the scale issue here really clear. So national office vacancy rose from 9.4% in the fourth quarter of 2019 to about 14% in the fourth quarter of 2025. Now, that 14% represents roughly 1.2 billion vacant square feet.
1.2 billion, you say, Xander?
Yes, billion with a B, Mark, as in Blink 182, the iconic 90s rock band.
Okay,
Got it in there, got the reference.
So much setup to that one. Okay, I get it. The 90s weren't so bad. I guess.
And maybe I'm going to have to stake a claim on some decade or another and start making references on these shows.
Or you could just pick the best decade. Like, I keep feeling fascination that you two are decadally conspiring against me. Okay, that was really awkward.
Okay, conspiring against you. I just want to point out that the 80s was arguably the birth decade of heavy metal. And I've definitely mentioned some of those 80s era metal bands before. Metallica, Iron Maiden, I could keep going. Pantera, Judas Priest, Ozzy, all classics.
I think for our listeners, if we haven't figured it out already, like Xander is a fan of 80s music, just different 80s music than me.
And by the way, a musician himself. But before we turn this into a music podcast, we're going to move right along back to the commercial real estate.
Yes, okay, let's. So when compared to that 1.2 billion, with a B in vacant square feet, the 52 million square feet worth of conversions only represents about 4% of that vacant space. So this is yet another reason why conversions haven't created national level tightening in vacancy rates, at least so far.
And another piece that often gets overlooked, when the pandemic hit, there was a lot of new office space already under construction, even as demand softened and the supply pipeline kept delivering projects that were effectively locked in by pre-pandemic decisions.
Exactly. So as you can see in the following chart, if you're watching the video version of this episode, from the first quarter of 2020 through the second quarter of 2025, the U.S. delivered about 332 million square feet of new office space.
That is a lot of new office space to deliver into a world that's still trying to figure out hybrid work, actually.
It sure is. And over that same period, conversions offset only about 15% of those new additions.
Okay, so we added way more office space than we removed by quite a lot.
Right. Yeah. Netting out conversions from new construction, the office market still added roughly 300 million square feet of net new space over that period, excluding demolitions.
Okay. So far, we've basically said conversions are real, but they're small relative to both total inventory and total vacancy, and they've been outpaced by new deliveries. That's why conversions haven't made an impact on a national level. But the story, of course, doesn't end there. What if we look at conversions relative to future supply?
Yes, here's where there may, in fact, be a potential turning point. So new office starts, perhaps unsurprisingly, have fallen dramatically. And starts are a forward-looking indicator of supply. So how much have they fallen? Well, office starts fell to about 4.4 million square feet in the fourth quarter of 2025, which is nearly a 25-year low. As of the second quarter of 2025, which is the latest conversion data available from CBRE, there's about 23 million square feet of office conversions currently underway, plus another 58 million square feet announced but not yet started. So in total, about 81 million square feet. By comparison, there's roughly 52 million square feet of office space currently under construction.
Aha, please hold while I do the quick math. So we found it. The conversion pipeline is actually larger than the existing construction pipeline. There's the rub.
There's a rub. Yes, and that is true if you include those announced conversions in the total figure. So this is why conversions could start to matter more over the next couple of years than they have in the recent past.
Okay, so Xander, what trends should people watch if they want to track the progress of office conversions and their impact on the office market?
Well, the first is office starts, so new construction starts. If starts stay near these multi-decade lows, then that's a pretty strong signal that future supply growth is going to stay muted and conversions will matter more. The second thing to look for is follow through on those conversions. So the announced pipeline is meaningful, but the real question is how much of that announced space actually becomes underway projects and then subsequently finally gets delivered. And third, I would say keep an eye on net supply. So that tug of war between new deliveries and space that's being pulled out of the office stock from conversions. And this is where conversions can really start to show up in the national data in the years to come.
Right. I guess it is much easier to announce that you're going to convert an office building than to actually do it. So let's say, for the sake of argument, the number of office conversions underway remains the same as where it is today, 23 million square feet.
So the number of announced conversions are moving into the underway pipeline at a rate that maintains the current number of conversions underway.
Right. And in this hypothetical scenario, at what point would prevailing levels of conversions become greater than the amount of new space under construction?
Sure. Well, it depends to a degree on what happens to new starts. If the amount of office space still being built keeps shrinking by about 5 million square feet each quarter, which is the average pace of shrinkage that we've seen from 2021 to 2025, then we'd be down to about 22 million square feet under construction by the second quarter of 2027. Now, at that point, with all the caveats we've just made, the square footage in office space being converted would be larger than the square footage being built. And that's just underway, not including announced square footage.
All right, so the main takeaway from today is conversions are real and rising, but they haven't been large enough to reset national office fundamentals, at least not yet. Where they can start to matter more is if new construction stays low and the supply pipeline continues to shrink. All right, Xander, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about a topic that's certain to remain top of mind in the back half of this decade. And I'm sure we'll have you back on to update us on what's going on. And thank you all for joining us on this episode of the REconomy Podcast. If you have an economics-related question you'd like us to feature in the future, you can email us at economics@firstam.com. And as always, if you can't wait for the next episode, you can subscribe to our Econ Center at firstam.com/economics or connect with us on LinkedIn. Until next time.
Thank you for listening. You can find even more economic content at firstam.com/economics. This episode is copyright by First American Financial Corporation. All rights reserved.